The reluctant guest Penny Winters adjusted the strap of her emerald dress for the 5th time, wondering why she had let herself be talked into attending her cousin's wedding solo. The invitation, with its flowing script and embossed flowers, had sat on her refrigerator for months, held by a magnet shaped like a camera, a reminder of both the upcoming family obligation and the career she felt slipping through her fingers. "Just a few hours," she muttered to herself as she entered the garden venue, a converted Victorian estate with fairy lights strung between ancient oak trees. Smile, eat cake, then escape. The April evening was mild, the setting sun casting a golden glow across the manicured lawns where guests in formal attire mingled with champagne flutes in hand. Penny scanned the crowd, recognizing faces she hadn't seen since last Christmas, faces that would inevitably ask questions she wasn't prepared to answer. "Penny! You came!" Her Aunt Vivian swooped in for an enthusiastic hug, smelling of expensive perfume and white wine. "We weren't sure you'd make it, with how busy you've been." Penny returned the embrace, summoning her most convincing smile. "I wouldn't miss Olivia's big day." "And where's that handsome boyfriend of yours?" "Thomas, wasn't it?" "Trevor," Penny corrected. "And we actually broke up 3 months ago." "Oh dear." Vivian's face fell in that particular way that suggested both sympathy and disappointment. "Well, there are plenty of eligible bachelors here. Today. Olivia's new husband has the most charming friends." Before Penny could respond, Vivian was whisked away by another relative, leaving her alone again. Penny made her way to the bar, ordering a gin and tonic that she hoped would dull the edge of discomfort that had settled in her chest. The ceremony itself was mercifully brief. Olivia looked radiant in her lace gown, her new husband gazing at her with unmistakable adoration. Penny watched from the back row, her professional eye automatically noting the perfect composition they made against the rose-covered arbor, how the light hit them just so. She should be happy for them. She was happy for them. But there was also an unwelcome hollow feeling as she watched them exchange vows. At the reception, Penny was seated at what she immediately recognized as the miscellaneous singles table. A collection of distant relatives and friends who didn't fit neatly anywhere else. She made polite conversation about the weather, the beautiful venue, and how delicious the salmon was, all while avoiding questions about her photography business or love life. "So what do you do, Penny?" asked the balding man to her left between bites of wedding cake. "I'm a photographer," she said, the words sticking slightly in her throat. Just last month, she'd lost her biggest client, a local magazine that had decided to go in a different direction after 3 years of steady work. "Fascinating. Do you do weddings?" "No," she said firmly. "Mostly editorial and commercial work. Or at least she used to." As the plates were cleared and the dance floor opened, Penny found herself gravitating toward the edge of the party. She nursed her second drink, watching as couples twirled under the twinkling lights. Her cousin and new husband had their first dance, followed by parents and grandparents joining in, generations of love on display. That's when she first noticed him. Not on the dance floor, but on the small stage where the wedding band was setting up. Tall, with tousled brown hair that fell across his forehead, he adjusted the microphone stand with practiced ease. Unlike the other band members in their matching suits, he wore a navy blue jacket over a crisp white shirt, no tie, giving him a casual elegance that immediately stood out. When he began to sing, Penny found herself moving closer to the stage, drawn by a voice that somehow managed to be both powerful and intimate at the same time. His eyes crinkled slightly at the corners when he smiled, scanned the crowd as he performed, and for one brief moment, they locked with hers. Penny felt her cheeks warm, quickly looking away and pretending sudden interest in her nearly empty glass. But as the night progressed and the band played on, she found herself repeatedly glancing toward the stage, and more than once caught him looking back. For the first time since arriving, Penny was glad she had come to the wedding alone. Harmonies and Heartstrings. 3 songs into the band's set, Penny had abandoned all pretense of mingling with the other guests. She found herself standing at the edge of the dance floor, sipping a fresh drink and watching the singer. His name was Julian. She'd learned from the bride's bubbly friend who'd noticed her interest. "That's Julian Mercer," the woman had said with a knowing smile. "He's been the talk of the local music scene for years." Olivia was thrilled when she managed to book his band for tonight. Julian's voice wrapped around each lyric like silk, transforming even the most overplayed wedding standards into something authentic. During an upbeat number, he jumped down from the stage and wove through the crowd, encouraging reluctant dancers to join in. His energy was infectious, his joy in performing undeniable. When the band announced a short break, Penny felt an odd disappointment. She wandered toward the venue's stone terrace, seeking refuge from the increasingly rowdy reception. The night air had cooled, stars emerging in the velvet sky above the garden. From here, she could still hear the playlist of recorded music that had replaced the live band. But it felt distant, allowing her thoughts to finally settle. "Not much for dancing?" The voice startled her. She turned to find Julian standing a few feet away, a bottle of water in his hand. Up close, she noticed the warm, amber flecks in his hazel eyes, the slight stubble along his jawline. "I'm more of an observer," Penny replied, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "Professional hazard?" When she raised an eyebrow, he added, "I noticed your camera bag under your chair earlier. Photographer?" "Is it that obvious?" Julian smiled, and Penny felt something flutter in her chest. "You have the look, always framing the scene, even when you're not shooting. You're quite observant for someone performing in front of 100 people." "Professional hazard," he echoed with a grin. "You learn to read a room when you're trying to get them to dance to Sweet Caroline for the 1,000th time." Penny laughed, the sound surprising her. It had been weeks since she'd genuinely laughed. "Is that part of the official wedding band playlist?" Unfortunately, Julian leaned against the stone balustrade, along with YMCA and Anything by Journey, but we slip in some originals when we can get away with it. "You write your own music?" "Try to. That's the dream, anyway." A shadow crossed his features. "Though paying bills with cover songs is the reality." The vulnerability in his admission resonated with Penny. "I understand that gap between dreams and reality," she said quietly. They fell into surprisingly easy conversation. Julian told her about growing up in a small town with big musical aspirations, studying at a conservatory before dropping out to tour with a band that ultimately disbanded. Penny found herself sharing her own story, her early success as a photographer, recent setbacks, and uncertainty about the future. "So, what kind of photography do you love most?" Julian asked, genuinely interested in a way that most people weren't when they learned her profession. "Storytelling through images, capturing moments that reveal something true." Penny hesitated, then pulled out her phone, scrolling to a collection of photos she'd taken for a personal project. "Like these." Julian leaned closer to see, his shoulder brushing hers as he studied the black and white series of street portraits. "These are incredible," he said softly. "You can feel the stories behind their eyes." The simple validation from a stranger made her throat tighten. "Thank you. You should be showing these in galleries, not worrying about commercial clients." "Says the musician playing Sweet Caroline at weddings," she teased gently. Julian laughed, running a hand through his already tousled hair. "Touché, we're quite the pair of compromised artists, aren't we?" From inside came the sound of the wedding planner's voice, announcing the cake cutting. Julian glanced at his watch. "I have about 15 more minutes before I need to head back." Penny felt a surprising disappointment at the reminder that their conversation was temporary, bound by the constraints of the evening. Julian seemed to read her expression. "Or," he said, a hint of daring in his voice. We could just not go back. What? The band can handle one set without me. My friend Owen can cover the vocals. Julian's eyes held a mischievous spark. Unless you're determined to catch the bouquet? Penny thought of the remaining wedding traditions, the questions from relatives, the emptiness of returning to her apartment alone afterward. Then she looked at Julian, this unexpected connection on a night she'd been dreading. What did you have in mind? There's a little jazz club about 10 minutes from here. A friend's playing tonight. Real music, no chicken dance required. He held out his hand. What do you say, Penny the photographer? Want to escape? The reasonable part of her brain listed all the reasons this was a bad idea. She barely knew this man. She'd promised her cousin she'd stay for the whole reception. She had an early meeting tomorrow. But as she looked at Julian's outstretched hand, what she felt wasn't reason but possibility. The first spark of it she'd felt in months. "Let me grab my bag," she said, placing her hand in his. Dawn's promise. The jazz club was exactly what Penny needed. Intimate, dimly lit, with music that didn't demand anything from her except to listen. They found a small table near the back, where Julian greeted the saxophonist with a familiar nod during a break between sets. "This is my favorite place in the city," Julian confessed, his voice low enough that only she could hear it over the gentle piano riffs. "Whenever I feel lost in cover songs and wedding marches, I come here to remember why I fell in love with music in the first place." Penny watched his face as he spoke, noticing how his expression softened when he talked about music that mattered to him. "Do you ever play here?" she asked. "Sometimes. When I have something worth sharing." He smiled self-deprecatingly. "The standards are high." As the night progressed, they moved from the jazz club to a 24-hour diner with cracked vinyl booths and the best French fries Penny had ever tasted. They shared stories over coffee, Julian describing the cross-country tour that had nearly broken him, Penny revealing how her passion project had been rejected by every gallery she'd approached. "Show me again," Julian said, sliding closer to her side of the booth. Penny hesitantly handed over her phone, opened to her portfolio. This time, she included the series that had been rejected, stark, honest portraits of people rebuilding their lives after personal losses. Julian scrolled through them slowly, his brow furrowed in concentration. "These are—" He paused, searching for the right word. "Transcendent. They make you feel something." The galleries said they were too raw, not commercial enough. "Because they're honest," Julian countered. "You're not just photographing people. You're capturing their resilience." He looked up at her. "That's rare, Penny." Something about the sincerity in his voice made her believe him, if only for a moment. "What about your music?" she asked, deflecting. The unexpected emotion his words had stirred. "Can I hear something original?" Julian hesitated, then pulled out his phone. "It's just a rough recording," he warned as he handed her his earbuds. Penny listened, eyes closed as Julian's voice filled. Her ears, not the polished wedding performer, but something more authentic. The song was about longing for something just out of reach, beautifully understated with just acoustic guitar accompaniment. "Julian," she whispered as the final notes faded. "This is beautiful." "It's not ready," he said, though his eyes betrayed his pleasure at her reaction. "I'm still figuring out the bridge." "It doesn't need fixing. It needs to be heard." They left the diner just after 3 a.m., neither ready for the night to end. By unspoken agreement, they began walking through the sleeping city, their conversation flowing easily between meaningful confessions and comfortable silences. "Can I ask you something?" Julian said as they crossed a pedestrian bridge over the river. "What happened with your ex? The one you mentioned earlier?" Penny sighed, watching the moonlight ripple across the water below. Trevor wanted certainty, a 5-year plan, a clear path forward. When my career started faltering, he couldn't understand why I wouldn't just take a stable job at his friend's advertising agency. He wanted you to be practical. He wanted me to be safe, she corrected. And there's nothing wrong with that. But every time I considered it, I felt like I was suffocating. Julian nodded slowly. I understand that. My last relationship ended because she got tired of waiting for me to grow up and accept that music would only ever be a hobby. Do you ever wonder if they're right? Penny asked softly. If we're just being stubborn, chasing something that isn't meant for us? Julian stopped walking, turning to face her. No, he said firmly, because on the rare days when everything aligns, when I write something true or perform something real, nothing else compares. And I think you feel the same way about your photography. Penny felt tears threatening and blinked them away. I'm scared, she admitted. Scared that I've been fooling myself all along. The fact that you're scared means it matters, Julian said, reaching out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle. If it didn't, you'd have taken that advertising job without a second thought. They found themselves in a small park as the first hints of dawn began to lighten the eastern sky. Sitting side by side on a bench, they watched in companionable silence as colors gradually seeped into the world around them, pale blue, lavender, then streaks of gold and pink. I haven't watched a sunrise in years, Penny murmured. Me neither. Always either performing late or sleeping it off. She turned to look at him, this stranger who somehow didn't feel like a stranger anymore. Thank you for kidnapping me from the wedding, Julian laughed softly. Best decision I've made in a while. His expression grew more serious. Penny, I don't usually do this, but would you maybe want to— Yes, she interrupted, surprising herself with her certainty. His smile was radiant. You don't even know what I was going to ask. Doesn't matter. The answer is yes. She felt lightheaded with exhaustion and possibility. Coffee, dinner, helping you finish that song, letting you model for my next photo series. Whatever it is, yes. Julian's laughter echoed in the empty park as he reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. How about all of the above, as the sun broke fully over the horizon, painting the world in golden light. Penny felt something unfurling inside her chest. Hope, perhaps, or the recognition of a beginning rather than an end. I have a gig next Friday, Julian said. Not a wedding. My own songs, at this little venue downtown. Would you come? Only if you'll look at a gallery space with me on Saturday, she countered. There's an open submission I've been too afraid to enter. Deal. He squeezed her hand. I should probably get you home. We both need sleep. Neither moved to leave the bench. Or we could get breakfast, Penny suggested. I know a place that makes incredible pancakes. Julian's smile was warm enough to rival the rising sun. Lead the way, photographer. As they walked toward the promise of pancakes and coffee, Penny thought about her cousin's wedding. She'd arrived alone, reluctant and defensive, expecting nothing but an evening to endure. Instead, she'd found an unexpected connection, a kindred spirit, a reminder that sometimes the best moments come when we least expect them. She'd arrived, alone at the wedding, but as Julian's hand remained securely in hers, she knew with absolute certainty that whatever came next, she wouldn't be facing it on her own.